I was
Well, it's
born in March. I know how the weather is.
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. And before we get into your book, before we get into your very busy life, I want to begin with March being the pandemic 4 years ago. It began. How did you get through the pandemic, and how did it subsequently change you?
Well, I really was thinking at first this is going to be so temporary. I mean, everybody thought that when the pandemic hit. I was a podcaster at the time. It's the Foundation of Wellness podcast. And my business was growing exponentially as a health coach. I had like a waiting list for clients, which was really nice. And I was also getting board certified as a health coach. And my husband works in the emergency room. And so there were all these like factors compounding that was making my stress tolerance much lower. And I had fears like everyone did, so many changes. My husband's like, you should go stay with your parents. I'm going to get you sick. Like we thought COVID was going to kill everybody.
Yeah.
And it was just a weird time. And so I have a history of depression. I think when everything compounded like that, I had to stop podcasting to just sort of like protect my sanity because I was doing it all myself. And I had done 90 episodes at that point. I was like, if there's one thing I can let go of right now, probably has to be that because it takes so many hours every week.
Yeah.
But after I did that, I was just like feeling kind of depressed and didn't know when the pandemic was ever going to end. And, looking back, it's because I was burning out.
Yeah.
That's why I was feeling depressed. I didn't know because I have a history of depression. I was thinking, like, damn it, like I let it happen again. But, afterwards, I realized come February, after I took my exam to become board certified, I realized that's exactly what was going on. I was burning out and I got really close to burnout, but thankfully it didn't happen. But I have like some PTSD from that burnout for real. Like every time I'm getting overwhelmed with too many expectations I put on myself or others do, I'm like, okay, this is not the life I want or the business I want. I need to slow down.
Yeah. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one of the kids says, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer that child?
Good question. Well, I'm a health coach, which means I help people who have goals related to their health, how to get from where they're at now and to achieve the health outcomes that they pursue. So if someone needs help making healthy habits or breaking unhealthy habits, or if someone needs accountability to discuss their health on a more regular basis so that their health doesn't take last place in their life so often anymore. As a health coach, I'm really just in someone's corner, helping them make health a priority on a weekly or biweekly basis, because otherwise it always ends up on the back burner.
That had to have radically changed because of COVID, because that was the thing. A lot of what we were seeing with COVID, as your husband can attest to, are people that were already unhealthy or the elderly or people that were already predisposed to getting to that point. So I would imagine now in this kind of post glow that people are looking at things in a much different way and maybe radicalizing the way that they do deal with health.
I think so. And the biggest way I've seen that occur is that people realize they have to take care of their mental health.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's a big part of what I do, even though I'm not a therapist. I'm not even a life coach. But oftentimes, half of someone's session, we're talking about all the competing stressors in their life and how that's getting in the way or impeding on their ability to improve their health. It's absolutely essential and part of the whole picture.
Well, and that was another part of, going through COVID was that it used to be taboo. It was like, yeah, get over it. That was kind of the prevailing mentality. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And then it became something that's like a physical ailment, like breaking a bone or going through something serious. It maybe just took a global pandemic for everybody to slow down and compound the mental exertion we are all going through to realize that things need to change.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, it's March 18th, 2024. We're talking right now. And I really think that people are busier than they were before the pandemic
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, everything's back to normal suddenly. And so all of these, you know, just layer after layer stacking expectations about what your kids are doing with their time, what you're supposed to do with your time, how available you are, and how you're supposed to manage working from home and, going back and forth to the office. Meetings, like people, a lot of my clients have just endless meetings throughout their day. And a lot of them are unproductive or they don't feel like they really need to be there, but they're required to be there. And so then they have all this pressure to get work done in between the meetings, but you can't really be in the right headspace to just transition into a task that requires more deep focus. It's an unsustainable model that a lot of really smart people are starting to realize. Like Cal Newport is a huge author in the world of business. He has like probably a dozen books, Cal Newport, and he wrote Slow Productivity that he just published. And I'm in the middle of that book now because he's just like, this model is unsustainable. We can't, think of intellectual work or creative work as something that we measure with productivity, because
Yeah.
when you try to put it in that box of like someone just doing labor work, you can't measure gains or profits in the same way that you would if it was in a different sector. But a lot of people are doing work with their brains and work that requires intellectual thought or, focused work, but we don't have opportunities for that. We don't have space as individuals to figure out how to get into flow in a workday that's so disjointed by all the other expectations put on us.
So let me ask you this. Let's go back to the 3rd grade. What did you want to be when you grew up?
The third grade again. um, well, I probably third grade, I don't know. I probably wanted to be like an actor or like on stage or something like that. Like I
Okay.
was very outgoing and extroverted as a kid.
So how did this happen? How did you get to a point where health is your focus and you wanted to write and you wanted to help people and coach people? How did all of these seeds get planted to grow into who you are today?
Yeah, I like how you worded that. It was not a very clear path. And for people who have my type of personality, I never felt like I needed to have a very clear path. But my brother, he followed the very, I know what I want to do. I'm going to college for that. I'm interning at that company and I'm staying with that company for the rest of my life. And I am the opposite. But, people would often question that. I was a career bartender in downtown Chicago, making mad money and having a great time and not thinking what's next. But a
Yeah.
lot of my customers would be like, so what do you want to do with your life? What's next? And I was like, I don't know. I'm not worried about it. Like things are going fine. And I know that I will figure it out. But I went through some health problems of my own suddenly in my late 20s. I was having all these digestive issues, irritable bowel syndrome, and embarrassing symptoms that I just refused to accept as part of life. And I decided to take it upon myself to learn how that could be related to my diet. I come from a family of foodies and restaurateurs and chefs, and I'm a foodie myself. And I think I just kind of have this innate wisdom that it was probably related to that, because I swear at that time, people just thought they need a medication and you're screwed. But it turns out it was definitely from something I was eating. I discovered I have a non-celiac gluten intolerance. So even though I don't have celiac disease, I'm intolerant to gluten. And that was kind of earth shattering at the time.
Yeah.
I'm Italian. I love food.
Uh-huh.
Food is a hobby for me. I went to culinary school just for fun. That's how much I love food. And to discover this giant, common, everyday food staple can no longer be in my life was something, I resisted. I played around with a lot, but immediately upon removing gluten from my diet, my IBS symptoms were resolved.
Oh,
And so it just sent me down this path of learning about like why that could be, learning about the microbiome. And I was introduced to the paleo diet. And for anyone who that term may be slightly new for, the paleo diet thinks about what humans did lifestyle and diet wise in the Paleolithic era, which is before we became a civilized species, before we had industrialization, before we had organized agriculture. What did ancient humans do that promoted health? And the reason they would look that far back is because that's the last time we've had any significant evolution in our genetics. And so our DNA expects a lot of the same inputs that humans always had, tens of thousands of years ago, but our way of life has advanced so rapidly that our bodies just cannot keep up with the changes. So our diet is completely different. Like before organized agriculture, there wasn't so much gluten in the diet. There couldn't be, it would be impossible. And also just in general, there'd be more diversity in your diet, and you'd have a lot more different plants and animal foods than we have now. But there also wouldn't be a lot of chemicals and highly processed foods and things sold in packages. And so the paleo diet like just really made sense to me the way I was raised. My family, one parent had the need for convenience, just like any, home cook. Oftentimes you're like, oh, it comes in a box. Great. That's awesome. But the other parent is like, what is in this crap? No, you're not eating that. And I think that was just kind of good for me to grow up with, to even though I was like, come on, that's not fair. Like this sucks. And you can't give me a reason besides you don't know what it is. But I think just in the back of my mind, that made it clear to me by the time I came to this point in adulthood and I learned about the paleo diet and I was able to reverse my own IBS. I was like, what is all the crap doing in our food system? Like,
Yeah.
why isn't there anyone looking out for us? And, my husband saw my passion in this field. I became a food blogger about my gluten-free recipes and the paleo diet. And then health coaching kind of became a thing. I became aware there was a primal health certification. So that's in the same paleo evolutionary biology sector. And so that, my husband's like, you should get certified as a primal health coach. Like you're reading this stuff all the time anyway. And, that was 7 years ago. So I'm so glad I did. It's
Yeah.
my passion.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in an Italian household, so my dad, like, food
Get
was a
it.
religion. He was
Yes.
full-blooded, so, when you smell the garlic roasting and the olive oil and all the tomatoes are getting unraveled on the, getting cut open. But it's funny because with what I noticed with him, he was overweight. He had a lot of health issues as he went on, and there was a point in your life when you can decide to turn it around because you do get to a point where it's so far in. I mean, it's never too late. I mean, that's the adage, but
Hmm.
there is a point with your health where you could have done it at a point where it becomes a habit, the
Hmm.
90-day thing, just making it a part of your existence where it's not painful anymore. So I think, I mean, was that kind of, I mean, I know you were going through avoiding, IBS and immediate things, but was there like a prevailing notion in your head that said, I can do something different that's going to just benefit me for the rest of my life?
It didn't really feel like a choice at the time, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It didn't because it was that disruptive. Like I would have unpredictable trips to the bathroom. I spent my honeymoon sleeping next to the toilet on the floor in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like not my whole honeymoon, but a night on my honeymoon because I made too many exceptions with gluten. And you go through that and kind of stuff enough times and you're literally like, I cannot live like this. I have
Yeah.
no choice.
Yeah.
And I think it's harder for people who feel like they do have a choice.
Right.
Gluten can be somewhat disruptive for a lot of people that don't even have IBS per se, or that don't have intolerance per se. But they know when I eat too much dairy or I eat too much gluten, I don't feel great. And so I tell people as a health coach, you a lot of times need to experience that dozens, if not 100 times before you finally are so sick of that pattern and being the cause of it that you wake up and make a change. And you
Yeah.
can probably understand what I mean by
I
that.
do. I do. My son's on the spectrum. He's 19, and a lot of the special needs community is on a gluten-free diet because it's totally beneficial to all of the neurological, everything that goes into who they are. So I
Mhm.
totally get it. So who's been kind of a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you to do these things and to get to different places in your life?
Well, I always looked up to Mark Sisson. He's the co-founder of the Primal Health Coach Institute, and he had a thriving, absolutely famous website, marksdailyapple.com. And he was the leader of the primal movement. He wrote the Primal Blueprint and many other books. And so he's definitely been an inspiration to me because he wasn't as dogmatic as like other paleo influencers are. And I think paleo's gotten a really bad name, like as if it's just the caveman diet or you just eat a bunch of steak and, nuts and you can't have anything else. But primal really sees the nuance. And like if you're someone that tolerates dairy, if you're thoughtfully sourcing it or, consuming it to a reasonable measure. It's like absolutely can bring pleasure to your life and enhance it. It doesn't have to be looked at black or white. Same thing with legumes and grains. You know, the paleo diet sort of like cuts those out entirely, and it's just not practical today. And some people don't need to cut them all out. I think everyone would benefit from reducing some of those foods, but ultimately I found that an inspiration because it spoke more to me. And I don't like dogma and I don't like scare tactics or fear mongering. And it's huge in the health industry. It's absolutely huge. They're just trying to get someone's attention. And it can easily change you as a person. That happened to me, you know, before I even became a fasting coach or thought about writing my book. And I was a food blogger. Um, Even just the education of my health coaching, I was like, oh my God, everything's going to give you cancer. Everything's going to give someone Alzheimer's. Everything's going to give us type 2 diabetes. And, you know, just catastrophizing like what is possible if we continue at this rate we are with our diet and lifestyle. But I lost a part of who I was in that process. It was because I was becoming unrecognizable. I was someone who wasn't fun to go out to eat with. I was someone who wasn't enjoying going out to eat with others either. And I was opinionated and controlling. And, you know, it was just absolutely nothing resonant of who I am deep down as a person. And so it caused me to take a step back and say, how can I now identify as someone with a gluten intolerance who cares about health and nutrition, but is also a foodie and loves to eat and is fun and carefree and accepting and all of these things. And, you know, it was actually quite easy as soon as I understood that polarity. And I decided, you know, it's sort of like a re-identification process for yourself. Like I can be both of those things just because no one else is doing it doesn't mean I can't. And that's exactly who I am. So it was very freeing to achieve that because I don't think I would have been a good health coach without that realization. I was too opinionated and afraid for others. And so once I crossed that bridge, I realized that I do my best work when I'm authentically me.
Yeah.
But it's scary becoming a business owner and trying to grow a new business when like you're seeing the way everyone else does it and saying, I don't want to do it that way. Like it's scary.
Yeah.
But that's how I ended up being an intermittent fasting coach and writing my book called Not So Fast, because not so fast, like just the title alone is like people are like, wait, am I supposed to fast or am I not? You know,
Right.
like so it's the subtitle is the smarter, more gradual approach to intermittent fasting benefits that last. And so I'm telling people like don't just jump in like you are with every other diet you've ever tried. If you want this to be enjoyable and rewarding and also help you succeed in turning this into a lifestyle, you have to be thoughtful and intentional with this process and walk your body through it in a hand holding fashion. And that's exactly the style that I teach. Because for me, it was never like, I'm going to start fasting and do it the way this website told me to. It was just like, let me feel this out. Let me see how it works. I have ADHD, and that's why it appealed to me because it's really good for the brain. And so I was like, okay, like, can I be more productive at work if I'm fasting? And I just played around with it. And then I realized everybody else is doing it wrong. They're being too rigid. They have too many rules. Like, try it my way.
You know what blows me away when I think about diet and the extremes that exist out there? Have you heard about this guy named Don Gorski that's eaten like 35,000 Big Macs? That's all he eats.
No.
It's bizarre. That's all he's eaten his whole life. Since he was 16, he gets Big Macs and he just freezes them, and that's the only thing that he eats, and he's actually healthy. Like
What the
he's
hell?
in his 60s, early 70s, and
That's
he used to get a
bizarre.
Coke with it, but cut back on that because obviously soda's just not good. It's just there's no way to cut that. But yeah, that's all he eats. So I
That's
think about
bizarre.
these. It's very weird. Like of all of the things that exist on the planet to eat, it's like I understand that you can like
Disgusting.
things, but come on.
Well, what
So
a lot of people don't know is that the more you eat of any one food, the more you populate a strain of bacteria in your gut that prefers that food.
yeah,
And then it's a feedback cycle of your bacteria in your gut telling your brain you want more of that food. And that's what forms a food addiction or cravings. It's because you have nurtured colonies of that bacteria in your gut that expects more of that food and wants
yeah,
more so they can continue overpopulating.
yeah,
And so he is kind of trapped in this situation because his brain and gut are telling him, this is great, keep
yeah.
doing
This is
it.
it. This is the
I
way to
mean, he
go.
sounds like an anomaly anyway, because for a lot of other people, they would get sick or have
Yeah.
nutrient deficiencies and it wouldn't work. But it's still like interesting because he probably prefers it at this point.
Well, it was kind of an outgrowth of that Morgan Spurlock thing, Super Size Me, where he got really sick after 30 days. It was that
Hmm.
idea, and he was in that show. So there's been this hyper focus, and they've turned it into kind of a celebrity thing. But yeah, it's just
Crazy.
any of that over the top stuff is too much. So let me ask you this. If you can meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, whether in your line of work or otherwise, who would you love to meet and talk to?
And I wish I was prepared for this. So I struggle with what's the word, hyperboles, when you have like, what's your favorite this or number
Gotcha.
one thing or one person you could like, I struggle with that because I'm like, oh God, there's a million people. But
Right.
I don't know. I think it might be, sheesh. I
We could
You
let,
just
let's
asked the
circle.
worst person that question.
All right, let's circle back around. Sometimes we got to go through taste testing here. So
Okay.
let me ask you this. What consistently makes you motivated to not only help others, but to remain disciplined? Because we all know you can fall off the wagon. We all know that things happen. There's holidays, there's all of these things. But what consistently makes you disciplined? And then what motivates you every day to help others be in that place of helping themselves with their nutrition and health?
Well, my personality type really responds well to external accountability. And so if someone is reaching out to me for some reason, that is very easy. I'm reactive. I'm very reactive instead of proactive. And so when I go through these ebbs and flows of motivation in my business, especially as someone with ADHD, I recognize that the lows are me waiting for something external to present itself to me. And even though that can be scary, and maybe for a lot of business owners, it wouldn't work to operate this way, it works for me. It always has. And I just need to stay present. Like I can't just like disappear off the face of the earth and go on vacation and, not be present. If I just stay present in the most minimal way, you know, whether that's social or business, if I stay present, I come to people's mind and they come to me. And that's huge because I have too many interests and I have too many ideas in my business. And so if and I don't really want to work alone, quite frankly. I accidentally started my own business. Like I would really rather work in a team or collaborate with others. And I thrive in that setting. And so I am just always waiting for something to remind me, like, that an opportunity awaits or that it's just about the right timing. Like I became a writer for the Primal Health Coach Institute blog. Never thought I was going to be writing for somebody else or whatever. Like just this just was not on my radar. But I saw some of the articles another writer on their blog was doing, and she interviewed me for the articles, and I enjoyed it so much. And I thought I would really enjoy doing what she's doing. And so I just told her, if you guys are ever looking for other writers, let me know. And the timing could not have been more perfect. Literally like 3 weeks later, she emails me, oh my gosh, they just asked me if they could find another writer and if I know anyone. Your timing was perfect. I'm like, oh my God, like, of course I was debating. I shouldn't ask her. Why would I ask her? Who am I? I just started coaching, like,
Yeah.
like imposter syndrome. But it just was so fantastic. And I got to work more closely with the whole team and write for articles about aspiring and new health coaches, what their challenges are building their new business. And that was, of course, instrumental in me reflecting on and contemplating growth in my own business and my strengths. And maybe that also gave me the courage to write my book, but it kind of all happened around the same time. I was like, I have this system that I teach. I've coached hundreds of individuals one on one and in groups, and thousands indirectly through my free resources and my newsletter and my podcast. And I just need to organize it all into one place. Like it
Yeah.
was driving me nuts that it was like an online course, and then it was for this program, and then it was just on my podcast. And I was like, no, this needs to be even for my one on one clients. There's no way I could match the value of a book, like all this organized content, just by meeting with them one on one once a week. There's just no way. Not even an
Yeah.
online course, I don't think, can do that in the way I've achieved with the book.
So, of all of these things that you've done and overcome and become in your life, what are you the proudest of?
I mean, I guess the book. it's it's just shocking how many my own friends and family like are like, I don't know any other single author, or it's such a major accomplishment. And I need to hear that sometimes, because the publishing community makes you seem like you need to make certain amount of sales, or you need to use this to scale your business, or they have other measures of success that to me aren't even relevant. Like, I have something now that I can proudly give any client or friend or family or prospect that I know can help them if they're ready. And so I feel like so good to say that this can live on, forever. If I believe that the information will always be relevant because it's based on ancestral health and evolutionary biology principles. But that doesn't concern me as much that it lives on forever. It's just that it's an extension of me that is me at my very best.
Yeah. So everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I always see myself as more than one person. I call myself a chameleon.
Hmm.
And, I used to wonder if that was a weakness, but I really think it's a strength. I'm extremely adaptable in social situations and personable, like person related interactions. And I think that's a strength because I don't feel in conflict very much with strong personalities, or with, changing situations as long as it involves other people. I feel like I can't solve it sometimes when I'm by myself, but as soon as I'm with someone else, like, it brings out another side of me. It's like we're projecting on each other our strengths and leveraging, what's possible through one another. And I think that my show, or whatever question you just asked, if I had a show, like, it would really just be like the many sides of Marisa. I think that's important. All the sides of me play a role.
So if anyone wants to pick up Not So Fast and anything about your world, hire you, your content, where can they go? Where's the best place?
Thanks. My website's marisamoon.com, my name. So it's like Marissa, but it's with one S, and we pronounce it Marisa. And my last name's Moon, like the moon in the sky. So marisamoon.com, and Not So Fast is on Amazon. It's a bestseller and a #1 new release. And I'm happy to share.
You should have said that up front when I said your name wrong. You should have been like, Not So Fast. It would have been the perfect plug,
That would have been
right?
great. Yes.
So great to meet you. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Keep doing the great work. I appreciate
You're
your time today.
welcome. This was fun. Thanks, Joe. It was such a
Absolutely.
pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.